In good conscience to your viewers, I'll be upfront. I think that people need to stop worrying about criticizing Israel. Not, by criticizing what you see in front of you, that doesn't mean that you are anti-Semitic. It means you're criticizing something that you see in front of you. So I think people need to stop worrying about, being labeled as this and that. And if they see something that's suspicious, don't worry. I'm not saying go out and say, oh, it was the Jews that did it. Don't ever do that. But I'm saying if there's a connection to Israel, there's no reason not to bring it up. It's stupid not to bring it up. What are we doing here if we're not bringing it up?
Welcome to another Just Informed Talk show. I'm your host, Craig James, with our guest, again, our good friend, military intelligence insider, goes by the name of Chris. He's been on the show many times before. We go into really interesting topics and conversations. Today is going to be really interesting. We're talking about what happened with this January 6th pipe bomber story. We're going to talk a little bit about the Epstein story, as it were, and touch a little bit on Charlie Kirk and everything connected to all of that. But before we do that, I want to welcome Chris to the show. Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Craig, thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Could you briefly, again, remind our audience your background so that we can get that out of the way?
Sure. I'm a retired Air Force veteran. I worked for the Inspector General, the IGIC, and from there I worked for the DIA, the Defense Intel Agency afterwards, and now I'm an independent contractor.
Very ominous. I say it every time. It's still true.
I don't know what's ominous about it, but I'll take it. I like that whole mysterious vibe.
Yes, this is very mysterious.
Chicks dig it.
That's right. That's right. So we're talking about today, though, some interesting topics that are sort of unresolved, in my opinion. You have, I guess, the starting point for it all. We should begin with Charlie Kirk. We have not had a chance to talk about this since it happened. This is an event that took place. We all know what happened to Charlie Kirk. He was assassinated in front of a large crowd in Utah at a college campus there. And from there, though, there has been every kind of conspiracy you can imagine surrounding who was behind his death. And this has gotten so big now that people like Candace Owens have built massive, not that she wasn't big to begin with. She had a huge following before all of this, but her relationship with Charlie Kirk and her investigative efforts into trying to uncover what happened to Charlie have led her to become, even more notable or have a higher level of notoriety. And the conspiracies range from everything from, we have the Tyler Robinson story, the lone shooter, disaffected Trantifa youth narrative or theory, which is the one that law enforcement has been going with, that he's been arrested. He's under criminal investigation or indictment now, and he's facing the trial there, to, foreign intelligence operatives coming to the United States to pull off this hit on him, to even as far as people claiming it was an inside job, TPUSA, some sort of domestic intelligence operation to assassinate him because of his influence or because of his opinions changing in ways that were not favorable to what the establishment wanted. I have my opinions on this, Chris, but let me start by asking you what you think the truth is behind Charlie Kirk's assassination.
I think it's a combination of several of the things that you brought up. First and foremost, I think that there was, and obviously Robinson was disenfranchised and indoctrinated. So, he's obviously the one responsible. However, I don't believe he worked alone. It's just, there's just too much that says that he didn't work alone for it. I mean, the spotting, the reactions of some of the individuals after Kirk was struck, which was utterly odd to me. I definitely believe that he was working with others. Who they were, I don't know. Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is Antifa just upping their violence. No. And that's just the first thing that comes to mind. And it's just all the evidence kind of points to that. Is there potential for look, Kirk was a big deal on YouTube, but as far as globally, I don't think a foreign leader cares about Charlie Kirk. So I don't think that he would be a big target. So I think it comes down to Antifa wanting to make a big splash, taking out a big name. And I think that's what happened.
Well, I'll ask you then about some of the interesting things that came up in the sort of aftermath of it all. There were meetings between donors that took place where conversations were alleged to have been had where for instance, Charlie's opinion of Israel was changing. It was becoming more nuanced, to say the least, in that he was starting to see things that he wasn't happy with, and he was starting to become more of a proponent for sort of this, I guess, what you would call a new approach to dealing with Israel, as far as having them as an ally and supporting them financially at minimum, and then militaristically, etc. But people say that has something to do with it. You have the strange letters and comments coming from the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, in the aftermath of it all, where you had certain individuals that picked up on what he was saying as being strange, if nothing else, in making comments about Charlie Kirk's passing. And on top of all of that, you had this young man who Tyler Robinson was alleged to have shot him with, the 30-06 rifle. And people have pointed out that nothing makes sense about how that bullet wound hit him and how it affected him. And then there's so many things. Then you can go all the way down the rabbit hole of the odd comments from the FBI director. I'll see you in Valhalla, and connections to some sort of witness protection program thing. I don't know. I've seen so many of these rabbit holes, the Egyptian planes that were, I think, sort of debunked now, but people still are throwing that around. It's all just so strange to me. I think you're right that Antifa was a part of it, but I'm reminded of, like, do you remember that time there was a kid who went into a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, and shot up the place?
Yeah.
And it
I definitely remember that. Yeah.
And it was it was framed as a white supremacist attack, and it was all during like the BLM stuff. And they found out later that kid was basically talking to a federal agent online who was like helping him on how to pick out body armor for the attack and what weapons to use and all these other things that never really got resolved. And I'm thinking to myself, Tyler Robinson sort of fits almost the exact archetype for that sort. I forget the name of that shooter from Buffalo. You can go look it up if anybody wants to look into it. But it almost fits the exact same archetype of somebody who's being worked in either some sort of MK Ultra type operation or some sort of influence operation. And isn't that what countries like China particularly, but also Russia and our other adversaries have been doing? They've been, just like they were doing back in the 80s during the Cold War, in, sort of infiltrating like the Black Panthers and other organizations to foment, this sort of civil unrest and chaos in America. Wouldn't it stand to reason that would be their intention? If a foreign country was working with Antifa and Antifa's the one ratcheting it up, there's a sort of a direct line that you could draw from China or Russia to, or even Israel, if they want chaos in America, if they want to destabilize us so that we have less time to worry about them and more internal strife to deal with. It could be of a number of things, or to do their dirty work for them. A guy like Charlie Kirk, an upcoming, highly politically relevant figure who may in fact could have had a shot at becoming president one day, who knows, who was changing his stance on Israel. That would be right there. You can draw a line of logic, right? It's not illogical to draw these lines. Hey guys, I just want to take a quick second and tell you about our friends over at godsfeedingstation.org. It's an online ministry, 100% free to use, and all you have to do is go to their website today, or you can download their app at whatever app store services your smartphone or device under the name God's Feeding Station. They have amazing content, including Bible studies, daily devotionals, and other scripture-based content that's going to keep you in the Word 24/7, 365. So go check out godsfeedingstation.org today, or download the God's Feeding Station app. And remember, God's Feeding Station, it's an amazing online ministry that's 100% free for you to use.
Yeah, I think that in good conscience to your viewers, I'll be upfront. I think that people need to stop worrying about criticizing Israel. It's not, by criticizing what you see in front of you, that doesn't mean that you are anti-Semitic. It means you're criticizing something that you see in front of you. So I think people need to stop worrying about, being labeled as this and that. And if they see something that's suspicious, don't worry. I'm not saying go out and say, oh, it was the Jews that did it. Don't ever do that. But I'm saying if there's a connection to Israel, yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to bring it up. It's stupid not to bring it up. I mean, what are we doing here if we're not bringing it up?
So you think Candace is, I know I went through like 1,000 different directions on that, but do you think Candace is acting, for instance, a person like Candace Owens, which is the irony of it all, right? That Candace Owens is the one whose sort of theory continues to develop. And I don't know where she's at now, where she's landed at now, but I know at one point she was saying, there is a very strong relationship between or correlation between what Charlie was saying in private to friends about how, he thought he was going to get murdered, that Israel would kill him. I think it was Harrison Smith from InfoWars who said, according to a source close to Charlie, Charlie said that he thought Israel would kill him if he didn't support them or something to that effect. That is it crazy what people like Candace are saying when they're drawing these connections? Or conversely, the ironic thing of it all is a person like Nick Fuentes, who has a complete and utter disdain for Israel, generally speaking, who's part of that America First contingent in the sort of right wing, as they call it. He's come out and said, well, Israel has nothing to do with it. And he's sort of, which I think has more to do with him worrying about his own life than, if that makes sense. But what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I just don't think they're involved in that. I'm just going through every possibility in my head. And yeah, I mean, there are suspicious things, but it would be a monumental risk just to take out somebody who might not support that. The risk versus reward to a foreign country for that and I don't mean that to be offensive to Charlie Kirk. His life was important. But in terms of geopolitically, he doesn't. What was he worth? If there was a foreign country involved, and if it was Israel or anybody, and if they were involved in taking him out, then I think that there has to be more to the story. Maybe they hate. And let me just say I'm spitballing here, but I'm trying to make it fit. If he had a contract with another, that you're going to say nice things about this country or that country, Israel in this case. And if he broke that contract, yeah, I mean, they might want to kill him then. I don't know. I just don't know enough information about. It's just odd to me that he's telling these people that he feels Israel's going to kill him, but he didn't go public with that. That's just weird to me. I mean, he was always very upfront about things. So I don't know how much I believe those words from those people.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, that I think I can see all sides of this issue, and it's very difficult to decipher which is real and which is false. But when people dig deeper into his background, Charlie Kirk's, you're seeing a man who is highly influential, right? TPUSA, the largest and most influential network by far politically in the country, at least especially on the conservative side, maybe on both sides of the political spectrum. He was targeting college students, which is one of the most, critical places to target because these are the future leaders. So you can make that sort of,
yeah, it's a good point. It's a good
point. You can
put
Greg, this all together and say, all right, if he did turn on this country, that would open the door for them to say, this is an unacceptable risk. Now, that being said, I also look at Charlie Kirk's, wife, who I have so much respect and I understand that she's a grieving widow, and I'm not going to do anything to say anything negative about her, but her behavior has been very strange in the aftermath, and her history, her background is suspect to say the least. Not to do anything to disparage her, because she seems like a very nice woman who's suffered greatly in this whole thing. But the fact that in 2015, for instance, she is being featured in documentaries briefing CIA analysts on EMP attacks and sabotage and espionage in America. And then she marries Charlie Kirk and all of this happens, and now she's running the organization, which I think does, because of that fact alone, open her up to at least be scrutinized because she is
Yeah.
now running the most influential after Charlie Kirk's death. We can all agree that TPUSA is the most influential political organization that is, going after targeting younger people in America by far, right? So those all kind of align to really make me start asking some serious questions. Now, do I think that Candace Owens and her ever-changing conspiracy theory is acting in good faith? I don't know. I've never thought that Candace is perhaps acting. I think that what she's doing, I said this before, and maybe I'll get your thought on it. I said if you couldn't have done more to discredit the earnest investigation into finding out who killed Charlie Kirk than Candace Owens has done. And what I mean by that is she has discredited herself in so many different ways by changing her story and sort of amending it to fit a new set of facts, getting things wrong, and then saying that she didn't, and doing these things over and over again. Like, if you were trying to muddy the waters, if you were trying to run interference, if you were trying to basically flood the zone with every conspiracy theory so that nothing could be taken seriously, you couldn't have done a better job than Candace Owens.
That's an interesting point, Craig.
So that's my perspective.
An interesting point. Do you think that she was used as a mouthpiece to sow confusion while the real issue was hidden? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And not only that, I would say it's not that she may have been a useful idiot, to be honest. I don't think that she was maybe knowingly doing it, but her effort and work has led to that. And I would take it one step further to say that it's the product that she's manufactured. That's what she's done. I mean, this is what she has produced. And I look at Candace and I see a person who's genuinely, maybe wants to get to the truth of this. I think she genuinely cared about Charlie Kirk. I think she was genuinely friends with him, and that her all of that is real. I think that she's been manipulated by outside forces to, like I said, muddy the waters, to obfuscate, to discredit, and it is done, and she's done a great job of it. That's what I think.
It's a valid point. It's a valid point. I mean, I'm just, there's so many oddities about that day the biggest oddity to me, let me just say this, and no matter what anybody says, I can't get it out of my mind, because I've been around gunfire many times. And when Kirk was shot, the moment of impact, when he was struck, I think it was his man, I don't remember, I have the name written somewhere, but if you're looking at Charlie Kirk, it's the guy to the right of him. His reaction was, do you know what I'm talking about, Craig? It was the oddest, most suspicious reaction. The guy literally calmly turned around and walked away, and I just was like, no. When a bullet impacts near you, somebody doesn't do what he just did. So it led me to believe that he either knew it was coming or something else, because that just was extremely odd. And I'm positive some of your viewers will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think
the individual, he was wearing a backpack.
One of his security detail there.
Was it security? I thought it was a man. Well, whoever it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it was one of the people in the crowd nearby or something like that. I think I know what you're talking about, but regardless, yeah, there was obviously some sort of coordination. Now, I think that, and here's where I think it gets really meta and sort of nuanced. You have to be sort of in the know to understand this. I think it's like an inception level of operational, complexity here, where it was an operation in an operation in an operation, if that makes sense. He's right
talking. I get it.
Because that's how you build in the plausible deniability, is you have layers of operational capacity. Like, you had the Antifa component, probably the one taking the shot, the fall guy. Then you had the people who were there to make sure that the shot was taken and that there was no interference, right? So that there was no cop that randomly walked onto a roof and, interfered with the whole thing. And then you have the sort of architects who planned it from very far away, who weren't there, right? I think there all three of those levels. Like I said, it's an operation and operation and operation. And I think that we in the public are being told about the Antifa operation, but that's the limit of what we'll ever find out about any of this.
Probably right. Probably right. We might, if depending on if his hearing, his court case is televised. I don't know if it's going to be or not.
But even if it
we
is,
might we might
he
huh?
let's assume he took the shot. Let's presume that he did this, that he's guilty, which we don't know. Court of law, we have to wait.
Right.
But let's presume it. Even if he did take that shot, he's a cog. He's a useful idiot. He's a part of a machine. He's a part of an operation that he could have been groomed for it and influenced to do it using AI and using intelligence, kind of spycraft techniques and MK Ultra type stuff and things that we'll never even fully understand without, a PhD in psychology to do this. And then, but then that doesn't, I mean, like, go watch the Jason Bourne film. I just rewatched those recently. Go watch, I forget which one it was, if it was the Bourne Supremacy or the Bourne Identity, but there is a plot in that movie that is like one of the scariest plots I've ever seen to a movie. And basically, the entire plot is and this is the plot to all the Bourne movies, but there's a particular movie in general that has a subplot that goes into how these people are trained without even knowing it, and then they go out and act on those impulses without any recollection of that action, right? Or an imprinted memory of that action that is the false idea of free will, even though they were programmed to do like an operation, like an assassination or something. So, and to think that that sort of thing is sci-fi, I think is. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that this last week should tell everybody that things that in the past people thought were sci-fi are reality.
And you're
after
talking about
what?
Venezuela, of course, right?
Yeah. One thing we didn't go into in the Venezuela thing is the drones, the mini drones we were talking about in that episode. Apparently, they were invisible and then visible. Like when they shot, they became visible, but when they weren't shooting, they were invisible. So some type
Are you talking
of
about to radar or to the naked eye?
I'm talking about to naked eye, like the.
Oh wow!
I mean, it's not really cloaking. It's basically mirrors. I mean, this is technology that's been worked on and released to a large extent. I mean, people know that it's out there, but the military has a higher. I assume, considering that the drones were going invisible, so they have to have some type of. I don't want to call it cloaking technology.
No. I think of it like this. Like imagine, those when you go to like I've seen them in like ice cream shops or malls where they'll have a bathroom and it's like all glass bathroom, and you go in and you flip a switch and then the glass becomes like opaque, so you can't
Right.
see through it. I imagine something like that where like
You're right.
you would have a button or a switch, and it would change the cloaking on the plane in real time or the drone so that it would literally look like it was vanishing into thin air because of, like you said, mirrors or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my uncle would be able to give you an absolute technical rundown on what it is, but that isn't I'm not an engineer. So, but yeah, I'm positive that it has something to do with mirrors, and it reflects light away from what's being seen or some shit like that. I don't remember the exact terminology, but yeah, I mean, we as in America were working on that, 20 years ago. So by now, I mean, it fits that these things were appearing and disappearing. So long story short, what was once scientific, Star Trek type stuff seems to be happening now.
Yeah, and I think the overall broader point is like what we see happen in real time may not, it most likely was not what actually was happening, especially when you think of the layers to an operation like this, that if it does have the expanding, implications and sort of other entities tied to it, that they have access to technology and systems that, they're never going to pull off an operation without plausible deniability built in, so that even if X amount of layers get compromised. All the layers will never be compromised, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's correct. Yeah, you could lose one layer, but not the entire onion. It's just
yes.
you want to. One thing can be sacrificed as long as the operation keeps going. So you're right. Yes, that's why you have to compartmentalize these different groups.
And of course, right now, I mean, it seems as though they want us to have Tyler Robinson and they want us to have the Antifa narrative. And, for better or worse, it's not, I mean, obviously it's for worse for Charlie because he's dead. That's just to make that clear. But Antifa is a terrorist organization that is operating domestically that we have to address. And this created an impetus to address it. So, hopefully it'll lead
Well,
to
yeah,
something, right?
well, the Tyler Robinson murder of Kirk wasn't the only one of its kind over the past 6 months. I mean, there have been, I think the last time I checked, there's definitely at least 8 Antifa connected individuals, blowing away a church or
Oh,
a
yeah.
school. I mean, this has happened quite a few times in the last, 6 months. Antifa has definitely been ramping up their violence.
Yeah. So it's not, and each, I wouldn't say every one of those is some sort of inception level operation. The Charlie Kirk one was
I
just
agree.
so, um, I think it was captivating and in the way that like 9/11 was captivating. And it was exploited almost instantaneously in almost the same way that 9/11 was exploited. So that's why my spidey sense tingles and alarm bells go off where I'm like, okay, this is most likely not what it seems. So we have to be skeptical. But speaking of skeptical, real quick, I want to talk about the January 6th pipe bomber. They arrested him. And now this is a crazy story. So they arrested Brian Cole, this like autistic black kid from Washington who was, supposedly, acting alone, planting these pipe bombs on January 6th for motives that are not yet really clear. And of course, this comes a week after, what was her name? Shawnee Kirkhoff, was that her name? The Capitol Hill police officer who works at the CIA was actually
Oh,
implicated as being a part of,
yeah.
as being the person responsible for planting these pipe bombs, happens to be a left wing liberal nut job. Um, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think both things can. I think I think both things can be true at the same time. That he was involved, but he isn't the one who was involved in that specific event. You know what I'm saying? Like he was an accomplice, and he's taking the heat for it. I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. His entire gait, his entire physical, coordination is considerably different between him and the person on the video. The person in the video, I mean,
Do
unless
you
it's a
believe the
very,
person in the video was Shawnee Kirkhoff?
I don't know, I believe it was a female or an extremely fruity dude, but, um, who it was, I believe it was a female. And I do believe that she was involved in it. I don't know if that specifically was her in that video, but yeah, I do believe she was involved. Yeah.
I will tell you this. I don't know who was involved. I know that the Blaze reported on the gate analysis having a high, I think a 90+% match to Shawnee Kirkhoff, whose story is insane. She is a Capitol Hill police officer who was working for the Capitol Police during January 5th, who was there on January 6th firing pepper spray balls into the crowd, who then got a job at the CIA working security there, who has been, sort of documented as being like a wildly progressive left wing liberal, right? Who supported like, Nancy Pelosi and all this other stuff. And the left wing is anti Trump, it seems. So she's like archetype, like how is, as Trump would put this, she's central casting for who you recruit to do this, right?
Yeah.
Some ideological zealot who's in the system, who's getting recruited by the CIA. I think she was being recruited for the CIA as she was a police officer at the Capitol Police for the Capitol Police, and during the time that the January 5th pipe bombs were planted. So if I mean, can you think of a better way if I was to try to recruit you to my organization than have you go do that and prove your loyalty, right?
Yeah. Yeah. let's say it was her. Let's just pretend for a minute and say it was her, and it was her first assignment. She failed miserably if that's the case.
which
I
is
mean,
why she's doing parking lot duty at Langley, by the way,
right.
and not a higher level like case officer or something. She is, I think she's like gate security at Langley.
Probably because probably yeah, because and by failed I mean because she was noticed. I mean, like that's
Yep,
that's rule number one. Rule number one: never get noticed. So
exactly.
the fact that she was not only noticed, but she was, or some female who, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that was a
Hypothetically, we're
female.
not saying that she did it. We're just
Yeah,
saying if she did do it, these are the things that would make sense about it. And this is all per the Blazes reporting, which has been retracted now, but at the time said that she was a 90+% match for her gate analysis as being the person who was planting the bombs on January 5th. We're not saying that she was. We're just
right,
saying that
right.
this is an interesting thing to hypothetically sort of play out. Um, and then
The entire event, if you really break down that entire event, the whole January 6th thing, it's awful what they did. I mean, and by they I mean the left with their conspiring with obviously some intelligence assets. I doubt they had, I doubt they had the FBI, and I'm doing air quotes on their site. They just had a few assets that they had. Um, but what
I
they
mean, they just
did,
had
if you
Ray
really think
Epps.
about it,
They just had Ray Epps telling people to break down the barriers and storm the
yeah.
Capitol. That's all.
I
You
mean
know,
that right there, if you really think, like, what would our ancestors have done if somebody acted like that in the United States? This is the part that I get angry about and fatigued about, is that this shit should have. I mean, the people who were involved in that should have been erased, and I'm being literal. So,
maybe they have been. I guess we'll never know. But
well,
speaking of erased, I'd like to get into this final topic before we wrap it up.
all right.
Jeffrey Epstein's files.
Wow.
Just yesterday, we had, I think that, or just the other day, President Trump was touring the Ford manufacturing plant and had a person who was working there, an employee, basically call him a pedophile protector for not releasing the Epstein tapes, to which Trump flipped him the bird and told him to fuck off.
Yeah.
So I think, this is where I want to end it with you is, we know they haven't released the full breadth of the Epstein files. We know that this is a battle. Congress has passed the law now that says it has to be released, and the DOJ is still dragging their feet. They're talking about redactions. They're redacting all kinds of information. They just released a tranche of redacted information that people were able to basically hack and get all the redacted stuff uncovered in. Um, People have used this to accuse Trump of being a part of the pedophile protecting club that's run DC for who knows how long. And I guess I'll let you know, I'll tell you my opinion on it, and I want to hear yours, Chris. But my opinion is simple, and I've told this to you many times before. Jeffrey Epstein was clearly an intelligence asset. Jeffrey Epstein was obviously operating, I think, at the behest of the CIA and the Mossad. I would say that he was something in between, sort of like an international arms dealer, but I think he trafficked not in arms, but in information. I think that the story I broke down about him and Ghislaine Maxwell's submarine license and the connection to the underwater cables and the companies that they were a part of or connected
Hmm.
to, I think that they were in some form or fashion running some kind of, this is coming after the Khashoggi connection. This is coming after Iran Contra. This is coming after he was facilitating the sale of arms through Israel to Iran, I believe it was at the time. Um, this is later in his life when he goes to Bear Stearns, then becomes this money launderer who then I think gets tapped into this more lucrative business, obviously, because of the money he had, which
Yeah.
was buying and basically tapping into global communication lines and then selling that information or access to that information or helping facilitate access to that information to the intelligence agencies who were tapping in there. I think that that's what he was involved with. And that's why Trump can't release the entirety of it, because the second, third order effect of it all would be cataclysmic. And you've said it before, I think, about what FBI Anon said. You mentioned that
Yeah.
to me, that it would be cataclysmic, but that's my opinion. Not to say that Epstein deserves to be protected, but it's to say that it'd be like if a really bad guy became like a serial killer, right? But he also was working as a scientist at the national lab, and he, was developing technologies that were like, and that was a terrible analogy, but he was developing technology. Like, do you think that, like, we would just know they'd be like, oh yeah, he was a serial killer and he was developing this secret cloaking technology we use on stealth aircraft, and this is how it's made. They're not going to tell you that, right? Just like they're not going to tell you about what Epstein
Right.
was doing, in my opinion.
Every single thing Epstein was involved in was, at the very least, a part of spycraft. I mean, we're talking about blackmail videos. We're talking about blackmail phone calls, tapping into, cables, tapping into, having access to global leaders, blackmailing them. Everything about him screams spycraft. Every single thing. So I have absolutely no doubt I would put he was a part of an agency. In my opinion, it was either France or Israel.
Well, France or Israel. So you don't think the CIA? I mean, obviously, but I think he would
Well, I
be.
think they were
He's like a,
involved.
yeah. I think you're right that that's probably who he was working for, and that I think he was sort of like one of those, for lack of a better term, like an independent contractor who worked all sides, who was sort of like a go-between where one organization could go to him and another organization could go to him, and they could broker a deal for whatever, right? I have
Yeah, it's
blackmail on
probably,
you. You have
yeah.
blackmail on this guy. Let's exchange blackmail, and then we have an agreement.
Right. I would put him into a. He's kind of like a professional, a government fixer, I guess would be the best way I could put it. Like if any government from the world wants blackmail information or that, then he would probably have been the guy to go to. And but here's another thing to consider is that his actions were, again, we go back to what we were talking about in a few episodes ago. Is he's in this hemisphere? I mean, so if he was causing trouble, you would think that he would have been wiped out, but that didn't happen. So there has to be, the CIA wouldn't have just allowed him to do it. He obviously was connected to them somehow, but I do believe he was either with GIGN or the Mossad.
I agree. I agree, and I think that's why Trump's never going to be able to fully release it, and I think that's why he's said the things he's said. And I also think that whatever files that they're trying to get him to release, especially these corrupt politicians who are probably a lot of the people who are being blackmailed by him, by Epstein or some of their, colleagues, friends, whatever, that Trump, my guess is, and this is just my guess, that they have taken something that Trump feels is compromising and are using it against him or his family. And I think that's what he's trying to protect as well. Not to say that I think he's done anything like what Bill Clinton did, but I would say that there's probably a high propensity or high probability that there is something in there beyond that Trump says, because like you got to remember, they tried to convince us he was a Russian agent for
Yeah,
the
yeah, you
last
remember
10
that?
years, right? They don't say it as much, but a lot of them still believe it, right? So do you not think that they would manufacture some kind of fake evidence to implicate him or his family in a way with the Epstein stuff, then slip that into that file and be like, hey, now we got to release it so that they
Oh
can
yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt they're going to try.
frame him in
Look,
the
Trump.
court of public opinion?
Look, Trump has turned a corner, in my opinion. You asked me earlier when I introduced. I know you know this already, but to your viewer, my original AFSC after being a linguist was I was a human intelligence specialist. So I literally was tasked with focusing on differences of actions of people, how that might affect strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And with Trump, let me tell you, he is a different dude. And I mean this in a positive way. the past few months. He's at the point now where he is just doing everything that needs to be done. And I think that he realizes, going back to what you just said, that he only has 2 years left. And if he doesn't get rid of these issues, they're going to come after his family. There is zero doubt that's going to happen. So this aggression that's happening, I think it at least partly has to do with that.
I think you're right. I think that's exactly it. And like I said, they tried to convince us that he is not just like an asset, but an agent of a foreign government, particularly an adversary government, namely Russia. So to think that they will not take it 10 steps beyond that is, I think, foolish. And I think that that's what he's trying to both protect himself, his family, and moreoverly, this nation from, because that would have a very disastrous consequence for America as a whole if they tried to pull off another Russia hoax and have it attached to the Epstein thing. They're always going to try to find their next angle, and that's probably it. So that's my thought. Chris, any final thought on it?
I think it would be bad not just for America, but society. I'm talking global society as a whole. I think that if too many people start questioning, every single thing in the government, even if it's, there's nothing there, I think that that's how chaos really begins, and that's how serious falls of societies take place. So I think it's good that stuff that doesn't need to be released doesn't need to be released. And by that, let me just be clear on that. I'm talking about behind the scenes military actions. All the criminal activity should absolutely be released. But as far as spycraft related to the United States, I wouldn't want that released because that's no other country's business. And just by releasing that, you're giving them an edge on how we operate, what our techniques are. You don't ever want to do that.
And not to mention you're giving them the ammunition to wage a war of public opinion that it could negatively affect us. And I'm not saying that, we should protect criminals to who frame people, but like you said, it's not a one-way street. You were saying this before, all of our adversaries are working tirelessly every day to kill us, to take us out, to take us down. And the minute we start acquiescing to that and thinking, oh, we have to be the good guys, meaning we don't fight vigorously in the same manner, then I think that'll be the end of America.
Without a doubt. And I, I think about this quite often, actually, how close we came to living in a completely different society over the past 10 years. If certain elections went certain different, oh my God, it just would have been, wow. We're very fortunate. I'll end with that. If you want my final thought, I think we're very fortunate that we still have 2 years of God willing, Donald Trump in office, because, I'll be honest, I wasn't very pleased with him for the first year, not because he did anything wrong, but I didn't think he was doing enough. I thought that he needed to go full balls to the wall and go after these issues, because if he didn't, they weren't going to go away, and they needed to be removed by any means. And now he's doing that. And now he is definitely doing that. And that's good, because we need that.
I agree. I think you're right. And I'll echo that sentiment. And I think we'll leave it there. So we hope you enjoyed this show. We'll have you back on sooner than later, Chris, to go over more stories. I know there's other things that we can cover, but we're going to try to keep it short and sweet, even though who knows how long that was. That was probably pretty long. But thanks for joining us, Chris. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, take care. If you and your viewers want me back, I'll be back, of course. Yeah, no problem.
All right, I know they will. So we'll have you back on. Until then, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.